Okay, take a deep breath.
Yeah, you'll need it today.
Seriously, do it. Because if you were listening to this and you've glanced at a news feed or looked at your phone in the last 24 hours, you probably feel like the world is just, well, spinning right off its axis.
It is definitely a very lively Sunday, to say the least.
Lively. Look, I reckon that is the understatement of the century right there.
Fair enough.
It's Sunday, March 1st, 2026. And usually when we sit down to do these deep dives for you, we're looking at maybe one major geopolitical hotspot.
Yeah, a crisis in one region or, a trade dispute in another.
Exactly. But this week, it honestly feels like the entire global board has just been flipped over.
It really does. I mean, we've got a full-on constitutional crisis brewing in Washington.
Right.
A massive, and I mean massive, escalation in the Middle East.
Yep.
A grinding stalemate that's drastically shifting in Eastern Europe. And then, out of nowhere, a completely unexpected new front opening up in South Asia.
Spot on. It's what we're calling the World on Fire theme today. And I think for a lot of people listening, it just feels like noise, it feels like utter chaos.
It's overwhelming.
It is. But our job today is to cut through that noise for you. We are working off an incredibly detailed, massive intelligence briefing from the channel Military Chessboard.
Or Ban Kwon Suna, if you're looking at the original source material.
That's the one. And the mission for this deep dive is to see if we can actually connect these dots, because the analysis we're looking at says this isn't random chaos.
No, not at all.
There is a design here.
There is absolutely a design. And to see it, you really have to look past the dramatic daily headlines and focus on the grand strategy.
Which is exactly what Military Chessboard excels at.
Straight up. Specifically, we need to look at how the United States, right now, under the second Trump administration, is maneuvering.
It's a very specific pattern, isn't it?
It is. If you sort of squint at the whole picture, you see an encirclement of China. And on top of that, a supreme high-stakes test of what political scientists call the madman theory.
The madman theory. I love that concept. Well, love might be the wrong word, but it's bloody fascinating.
It's critical to understand right now.
But before we get to that global strategy, we have to start right here at home. Because while the rest of the world is literally burning, the White House just took a massive hit from, of all places, the Supreme Court.
That's right. And look, this is arguably the most significant domestic event for the Trump administration in this entire second term.
So let's unpack this domestic shockwave. The U.S. Supreme Court has completely blocked Trump's mechanism for imposing tariffs.
Correct. And it wasn't a narrow ruling either. It was a 6-3 vote.
6-3.
Yeah. And the specifics here are really important for understanding why the president is so furious right now. The court didn't just say, no, you can't do this one thing. They ruled that the administration had significantly overreached its authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977.
The 1977 Act. That was basically the legal bedrock for his entire trade war, wasn't it?
It was the magic wand. That act is what allows the president to regulate commerce after declaring a national emergency.
So they were using it as a loophole.
Essentially, yes. The administration has been using it as a catch-all to impose these sweeping tariffs without needing to go through the slow, painful legislative process of Congress.
Because Congress takes forever.
Exactly. But the court came out and said, essentially, you can't do that anymore. The emergency powers don't stretch that far.
And the vote count, that 6-3 split, that is the part that has everyone talking today.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it wasn't just the liberal justices blocking a conservative president, which is what you might assume.
No, and that is the real et tu, Bruce moment for Trump here. The majority opinion was actually written by Chief Justice Roberts.
Right.
But joining him were Justice Gorsuch and Justice Barrett.
Two of Trump's very own appointees from his first term.
Spot on. They crossed the aisle, so to speak, on this legal issue. Trump immediately called it a disgrace.
Yeah, he accused them of working for foreign interests, didn't he?
He did. But legally speaking, the rhetoric doesn't change the outcome. It is a knockout blow to his preferred method of economic warfare.
And the economic stakes here, I mean, they are astronomical. You have to remember, for you listening, the America First strategy in the second term is built almost entirely on the revenue from these tariffs.
Completely. It's the core pillar.
Because the deficit was actually starting to look a bit better, wasn't it? I saw some numbers in the Military Chessboard briefing something about the deficit dropping down to $1.8 trillion.
It was definitely improving. In fiscal year 2025, the deficit dropped by about $50 billion compared to the previous year.
That's a massive shift.
It is. The government even reported a really significant drop in the monthly deficit just recently, in January 2026.
So the strategy was working, at least on paper.
On paper, yes. The argument from the administration was that the tariffs were filling the national coffers and at the same time incentivizing domestic manufacturing.
Not.
Now, that entire revenue stream is legally dubious at best.
And it's not just about the money coming in moving forward, is it? The briefing mentioned something about a risk of mass lawsuits. What does that actually mean on the ground?
Well, think about it from a corporate perspective. If the Supreme Court of the United States just ruled that the mechanism you used to collect billions in taxes was legal,
Oh, wow.
what do the companies who paid those taxes do?
They're going to want their money back. They ask for a refund.
Exactly. They sue. The corporate lawyers are already lining up. We're talking about potentially hundreds of billions of dollars that companies could sue the federal government to recoup.
That is wild.
They could blow a hole in the budget that makes those previous deficits look like absolute pocket change.
So on one hand, you have this massive domestic budget crisis brewing. But on the other hand, and this is what brings us back to that madman theory we mentioned, you have a profound leverage crisis globally.
And this is the much more immediate geopolitical problem.
Right. Can you just break down the madman theory for us? I know Nixon famously used it during the Cold War, but how is it playing out right now in 2026?
The core idea of the madman theory is surprisingly simple. You want your adversary to believe that you are totally irrational.
Unpredictable.
Exactly. Volatile. Or willing to authorize a completely disproportionate response.
So the logic is, if they think you might actually blow up the entire global trade system over a minor, trivial dispute,
they will concede. They'll fold just to keep you calm and avoid the explosion. It is essentially weaponized unpredictability.
don't poke the bear because the bear is crazy.
Precisely. And the thing is, for the last year, it was working.
It really was.
The analysis from Military Chessboard highlights this beautifully. Countries in the European Union, and even incredibly close allies like Israel, were making really significant trade concessions to the U.S.
Solely because they were terrified of Trump dropping tariffs on them.
Right. They were folding before the game even started, just to appease the administration.
But now, with this ruling, the Supreme Court has effectively taken the gun right off the table.
Or at the very least, they've revealed to the world that the gun might not actually be loaded.
Which is critical because of the timing.
The timing couldn't be worse for the White House. President Trump is scheduled to visit Beijing to meet with President Xi Jinping in late March.
That's literally weeks away.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. He was walking into that high-stakes meeting planning to basically slam a massive tariff threat on the table to get what he wants.
And now Xi Jinping knows full well that Trump cannot unilaterally impose those tariffs anymore.
Because he'd have to go through Congress.
Or launch a very long, drawn-out investigation. It weakens Trump's hand enormously.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't act unilaterally, your entire madman threat loses its teeth.
So what does Trump do in this scenario? I mean, does he cancel the trip? Does he fold?
You know the personality type. He doubles down.
Yeah, right, of course.
He is already floating this idea of a universal 10% tariff using entirely different legal avenues.
So he's trying to bypass the ruling altogether.
He's signaling to Xi Jinping, I don't care what the court says, I will find a way to make you pay. He has to prove to the world he's still dangerous.
So ironically, the domestic chaos is actually fueling his international aggression. He has to overcompensate for the court's ruling by acting even tougher abroad.
Exactly right. And that brings us seamlessly to the European theater, where this demand for toughness is manifesting in a completely different and very bloody way.
Yeah, let's pivot to Eastern Europe. Let's look at Ukraine. Because the narrative we are hearing every day in the mainstream media versus the stark intelligence in this military chessboard briefing, they're like two completely different realities.
They really are. It's night and day. If you look at the Western press right now, places like Foreign Affairs, The Telegraph, they are consistently painting a picture of a Russia that is right on the brink of total collapse.
Right. You see the headlines. They cite, 1.2 million Russian casualties?
Yep. 1.2 million men lost. A crumbling, sanctioned economy, and a military apparatus that is just running out of steam.
But the military chessboard source says, yeah, not so fast.
The reality detailed in the source material is much, much grimmer for Ukraine. It describes a Russia that hasn't collapsed. It has adapted.
We have to remember, this is year 5 of the war now.
Exactly. It's not a rapid blitzkrieg anymore. That failed years ago. It's now a slow, grinding war of attrition. And economically, Russia is surprisingly insulated from the West's attempts to bleed them dry.
That gold reserves figure in the briefing just blew my mind. $806 billion.
It's a record high for them.
How is that even possible with all the sanctions?
It's largely because the global price of gold has absolutely skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So while the West successfully froze hundreds of billions in Russian overseas assets,
Right.
the physical gold that they kept at home inside Russia appreciated so much in value that it essentially offset all those frozen asset losses.
So they literally have money to burn on this war.
They do. They can fund a war of attrition.
And on the actual battlefield, it sounds horrific. We have Ukraine now using these new Flamingo missiles.
Yes, these are deep strike missiles, though they have a very limited supply of them. But Ukraine did manage to use them to hit a crucial missile factory deep inside Russian territory recently.
Which is a stinging blow.
It is a blow, sure. It's a PR victory and a tactical win. But you have to look at what Russia is throwing back in response.
Right, the 3-ton aerial bombs.
These are devastating unguided glide weapons. And we are seeing reports that they used one of these massive 3-ton bombs to completely destroy a dam near Kostiantynivka.
A dam?
Yes. And the strategic goal there isn't just about blowing up concrete. It's about flooding the entire surrounding area.
To cut off supply lines.
Exactly. You cannot drive heavy armor or supply trucks through a massive man-made flood. It stops Ukrainian logistics cold. It's brutal, but highly effective in a war of attrition.
But reading the briefing, it seems the biggest shift right now isn't actually the bombs falling, it's the diplomacy, or really the total lack of it.
Yes, the diplomatic front is fracturing.
There was a massive signal at the UN recently regarding Ukraine's territorial integrity. Usually the U.S. is the very first country raising its hand in support of Kyiv.
And this time, the United States abstained.
They abstained. That is huge.
It's a deliberate, calculated diplomatic snub. You have to read the tea leaves here. The Trump administration is signaling directly to Zelensky that the era of the blank check is officially canceled.
By not voting for their territorial integrity.
Right. By abstaining, Washington is essentially saying, we are no longer going to blindly support your goal of total absolute victory.
Because total victory means pushing Russia out of every inch of territory.
Which Washington now views as unrealistic.
Yeah.
They want Zelensky to negotiate.
They want him to concede.
They do. The military chessboard analysis suggests that the U.S. strategy right now is to force a peace deal, which would almost certainly involve Ukraine giving up the Donbas region permanently.
Why push so hard for that now, though?
So that Washington can stop spending billions in Europe and pivot all its military and economic resources to the Pacific to contain China.
But Zelensky isn't biting, is he?
No. He is digging his heels in. He's actively talking about preparing the country for 3 more years of war.
3 years.
His calculation seems to be that he just has to outlast Trump's second term. If Ukraine could just hold the line until early 2029, maybe the next U.S. president shifts the policy back to full support.
That seems like an incredibly dangerous, desperate gamble for a country that is physically being destroyed day by day.
It's a massive risk.
And speaking of destruction, the energy situation in Europe, I mean, it has reached a level of absurdity that you almost have to laugh at if it weren't so deeply tragic for the people living there.
It really is the definition of irony right now.
So let me just make sure I have this straight for our listeners. Ukraine is publicly demanding billions in financial and military aid from the European Union.
Yes, desperately demanding it.
But at the exact same time, Ukraine is intentionally attacking the Druzhba pipeline.
The very pipeline which feeds vital oil directly to Hungary and Slovakia.
Who are members of the EU and NATO.
Exactly. Ukraine is actively bombing the energy supply lines of the very countries whose unanimous vote they require to get those EU aid packages approved.
It's literal internal sabotage within the Western alliance. It makes no sense.
It's a desperate tactic to hurt Russian oil revenues, but the collateral damage is their own allies.
And naturally, Hungary and Slovakia are absolutely furious about this.
They are livid.
Yeah.
And they are retaliating the only way they can by blocking everything in Brussels.
So new sanctions?
The 20th sanctions package against Russia, blocked by them. Billions in new EU loans to keep the Ukrainian government running, blocked.
Wow.
They are openly saying, why on earth should we fund a country that is actively trying to freeze our own citizens by cutting off our oil?
It's a total diplomatic fracture, and it plays right into Russia's hands, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Putin doesn't even have to divide Europe. They are dividing themselves over energy.
It's a complete mess. A muddy, bloody stalemate in the trenches with supposed allies fighting each other in the boardrooms.
It is.
But look, if Europe is a stalemate, the Middle East is, well, it's exploding. Let's move to part 3 of our deep dive.
This is where the World on Fire title really truly earns its keep.
We talked earlier about Trump needing to look tough after the Supreme Court ruling. He gave Iran an ultimatum.
10 to 15 days. That was the window he gave Tehran to agree to a completely new, highly restrictive nuclear deal.
A very tight window for international diplomacy.
Impossibly tight. And predictably, the negotiations failed completely.
So what happened when the clock ran out?
The hammers dropped. We are seeing reports confirming that Israel has launched a massive, coordinated preemptive strike.
Inside Iran.
Deep inside, we're talking about major strikes on targets in Tehran and Isfahan, which is the absolute heart of the Iranian nuclear program.
And what is the U.S. role in all this? Are American jets dropping bombs?
Officially, the U.S. claims it is merely coordinating.
Right, coordinating.
They're letting Israel take the lead publicly and absorb the initial political fallout. It allows the United States to participate heavily, providing intelligence, logistics, radar support, without having to formally ask Congress to declare war.
Though that distinction between coordinating and fighting is getting thinner by the minute.
It's paper thin at this point.
Now, I have to bring up this one specific detail from the Military Chessboard briefing because, well, it's both gross but also incredibly telling about the state of the U.S. military right now.
I know exactly where you were going with this.
The USS Gerald R. Ford.
The pride of the U.S. Navy.
Exactly. A $13 billion supercarrier, the most advanced aircraft carrier in human history.
Yep.
It has been deployed to the region for over 240 days now, and the intelligence report notes that, and I'm reading this right, the ship's sewage system is clogging daily.
It sounds like a bad joke, but it is a perfect metaphor for the broader strategic situation.
How does a $13 billion ship have plumbing issues?
The Ford uses a highly advanced, high-tech vacuum sewage system. It's very similar to what you see on commercial airplanes, but scaled up for a crew of thousands.
Okay.
But because this deployment has been extended so many times, over 240 days at sea, and the crew is so overworked and the systems are running constantly, it's failing.
Wow.
The maintenance crews are literally unclogging toilets every single day just to keep the ship habitable, all while aircraft are launching off the deck above them to prepare for a regional war.
That is just, wow. It really paints a vivid picture of the strain on the forces. We have all this incredible high-tech gear, but Washington is pushing it to the absolute breaking point.
The hardware, the humans, and the plumbing, they can only take so much pressure before something cracks.
It highlights the extreme risk of overextension. I mean, we are trying to pivot to Asia to contain China. We are funding and managing a massive proxy war in Europe. And now we're supporting direct strikes in the Middle East.
Even an American supercarrier has its limits.
Exactly. So with bombs now actively falling on Tehran and Isfahan, the trillion-dollar question is, where is China in all this?
That's the key variable.
Because Iran is a major strategic ally of Beijing. They buy massive amounts of Iranian oil. Do they step in to protect them?
This is the critical geopolitical calculation.
Yeah.
And the deep analysis from Military Chessboard is very clear on this. China will not save Iran militarily.
They're really just going to leave them hanging?
Militarily, yes. They will provide strong diplomatic cover. You'll see angry statements and vetoes at the UN Security Council.
Right.
And they will absolutely keep buying Iranian oil. In fact, right now, Iran is frantically exporting as much oil as physically possible to China before their port terminals get bombed into rubble.
Cashing out while they can.
Exactly. But Beijing is fundamentally pragmatic. They are not going to start World War III against the United States over Tehran. It is simply not in their core national interest.
So they will just sit back and let Iran take the hits.
They will. And Washington knows this. The strategic goal here for the U.S. isn't just about degrading a few nuclear centrifuges.
It's bigger than that.
Much bigger. They are hoping for a Venezuela-style outcome in Iran.
Meaning total regime collapse.
Exactly. Maximum pressure from all sides. You bomb the military infrastructure, you squeeze the economy until it screams, and you hope that the government in Tehran crumbles from the inside due to civilian unrest.
Just like the maximum pressure campaigns we saw in South America?
Spot on. If the Iranian regime falls, the U.S. essentially secures the Middle East and completely removes a huge vital piece from China's side of the global chessboard.
Which brings us to the next piece of that very chessboard. And this one, look, I admit, I did not see this coming at all. Pakistan.
The surprise front.
Right. I think most people listening would think of Pakistan as a rock-solid Chinese ally. They have the massive China-Pakistan economic corridor, all those Belt and Road infrastructure projects.
They've been very close for decades.
But suddenly, out of nowhere, Pakistan is bombing Afghanistan.
Yes. They launched Operation Justice's Rage, or GABLIF-H. Pakistan initiated heavy airstrikes on Taliban targets right inside Afghan territory.
But you have to look at the why, don't you? It's not just a localized border skirmish over militants.
Not at all. The Military Chessboard briefing calls this a fundamental strategic pivot. Pakistan is actively pivoting away from Beijing's sphere of influence and moving rapidly toward Washington.
It's a massive betrayal of Beijing. I mean, think about the geography for a second. Pakistan has always been China's crucial window down to the Indian Ocean.
Exactly. But now Islamabad is making aggressive moves that directly benefit American interests.
The rare earths deal, that was the smoking gun in the report for me.
Absolutely. Rare earth minerals are the lifeblood of the modern economy. They are vital for everything from the iPhone in your pocket to the Gaian systems in F-35 fighter jets.
And China has essentially held a global monopoly on them for years.
They have, but Pakistan has suddenly begun shipping its own rare earth minerals directly to the United States, completely bypassing China's processing supply chains.
That directly undermines one of China's biggest points of economic leverage against the West.
It's a massive stab in the back for Beijing. But the bigger prize here, the thing Trump has really wanted since his first term, is Bagram.
Bagram Air Base, the massive facility the U.S. controversially abandoned during the Afghanistan withdrawal under Biden.
Trump has been very vocal, almost obsessed with getting that base back. And strategically speaking, when you look at a map, you can see exactly why.
Because of where it sits.
Right, it's about 40 miles outside of Kabul. But more importantly, it is only a 1-hour flight time from China's highly sensitive nuclear testing sites at Lupner.
1 hour. That is literally right on their doorstep.
It is. If the U.S. military regains control of Bagram, it puts America's tactical assets, surveillance planes, and potentially nuclear bombers right on China's vulnerable western flank.
So the analysis suggests the U.S. is quietly supporting Pakistan's military strikes on the Taliban.
To soften the Taliban up. The play is to apply so much military pressure via Pakistan that it forces the Taliban leadership into a desperate deal, specifically a deal where they lease Bagram Air Base back to the United States in exchange for peace and maybe some financial aid.
That is some serious 3D chess right there. You use Pakistan to hammer the Taliban just so the Taliban is forced to give the U.S. a forward operating base to threaten China.
It's incredibly aggressive. It's highly risky. But if Washington pulls it off, it completely rewrites the entire security architecture of Central Asia.
It really seems like every single region we touch on today, the underlying unspoken theme is just squeezing China.
That is the grand design.
Even in our own hemisphere. Let's look at Part 5, the Americas.
The Western Hemisphere strategy right now is all about aggressively cleaning up America's own backyard.
Let's talk about Panama first, because the Panama Canal is obviously one of the most important maritime choke points in the world.
And for years now, a Hong Kong-based firm, C.K. Hutchison, has effectively controlled the operations at two of the most major ports there, Balboa and Cristobal.
Which has always seemed crazy to me from a U.S. security standpoint. A Chinese-linked firm basically controlling the entry and exit points to the canal.
Well, the U.S. finally acted. The Panama Supreme Court just issued a ruling that puts an end to it. They legally seized those ports right back from the company.
Just like that, out of the blue.
Just like that. And look, you can bet your life savings that officials in Washington were whispering, or more likely, shouting in Panama's ear to make sure that ruling happened.
It instantly kicks Chinese logistics and intelligence influence right out of a critical global choke point.
Exactly. It secures the canal strictly for U.S. and allied interests.
And then just north of there, there's Cuba.
Cuba is in total darkness right now, literally.
The blackout crisis.
It's a highly coordinated multinational squeeze. The U.S. exerted massive diplomatic and economic pressure on both Venezuela and Mexico to immediately cut off all their subsidized oil shipments to Havana.
And without that oil, their power grid just failed.
The grid has completely collapsed. The goal here is maximum pressure all over again, just like in Iran.
Force a regime collapse from the inside.
And starve the regime of energy, spark mass protests, and hopefully remove a key Russian and Chinese intelligence foothold that sits just 90 miles off the coast of Florida.
It's ruthless.
Grand strategy usually is ruthless. It's not about fairness, it's about power.
So when we take a breath, step back and look at this entire global map today.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. We have the Supreme Court at home hobbling the president's economic trade war. We have a muddy, bloody stalemate in Ukraine where Washington is actively trying to force a bitter peace deal.
Yep.
We have open, direct military strikes in the Middle East designed to break the Iranian regime. And we have this wild surprise pivot in Pakistan to outflank China's western border. And we have a ruthless energy crackdown in Latin America.
To the average person watching the news, it just looks like random global chaos.
Yeah.
But if you connect the dots, exactly as the Military Chessboard briefing suggests, it is a highly coordinated global encirclement strategy.
Isolate China at all costs.
Cut off their vital allies, Iran, Russia, Pakistan. Secure the crucial global resource chains, the rare earths from South Asia, the shipping ports in Panama.
And force a peace deal in Europe so the U.S. military isn't distracted across the Atlantic.
Spot on. It is a massive, incredibly high-stakes attempt by the United States to systematically dismantle the emerging anti-Western axis piece by piece.
But here's the critical question I just keep coming back to after reading all this, the madman theory.
Right.
That entire theory relies on your adversaries genuinely fearing you, fearing what you might do.
Yes.
But with the U.S. Supreme Court actively taking away Trump's biggest economic weapon, the tariff stick, and with the U.S. military literally struggling to keep the basic plumbing working on the USS Gerald R. Ford.
So it projects weakness.
Exactly. Is the madman theory running out of runway?
That is the ultimate danger of this entire strategy. If your adversaries, especially someone as calculating as Xi Jinping, realize that your military is stretched far too thin globally, or that your own domestic legal system is actively tying the president's hands.
The fear just evaporates.
And when the fear evaporates, the madman no longer looks dangerous. He just looks like a bluffer with a bad hand.
And in geopolitics, bluffs eventually get called.
They do.
And if Xi Jinping decides to call that bluff when they meet later this month in Beijing,
Then March 2026 is going to get even hotter than it already is.
man, what a time to be alive. We're really going to have to watch how all these dominoes fall day by day.
Indeed we are.
Well, a huge thank you to the Military Chessboard channel for the incredibly deep, detailed intelligence briefing that made today's episode possible. It is dense, complicated stuff, but it's absolutely crucial for understanding the real world.
I always say, question the daily headlines. Look for the actual grand strategy underneath the noise.
Exactly right. And for you listening right now, what stands out to you from all this? Do you reckon this encirclement of China is a masterclass in grand strategy, or is it a fragile house of cards just waiting for one stiff breeze to fall?
It's the defining question of the decade.
It really is. Think about it. And hey, make sure you hit that like button, jump into the comments to share your own geopolitical theories, and definitely subscribe to the Military Chessboard channel so you never miss these vital updates. We'll see you all in the next deep dive.